There comes a moment, sometimes while folding laundry, sometimes while sitting across from someone we once called home, when a quiet thought slips in. Why does it feel like I'm not truly loved? Not just cared for or appreciated, but deeply, undeniably seen. Many people reach midlife carrying this unspoken ache, an emotional weight that even the strongest routines and responsibilities can't mask. Friedrich Nietzsche would not have offered comfort for this discomfort. He wouldn't have reassured us with platitudes or promised that love would arrive if we were simply patient enough. No, Nietzsche would have said something far more unsettling and far more liberating. No one will truly love you until you are no longer afraid to confront who you really are. That statement stings, especially because most of us believe we have faced ourselves. After all, life has tested us. We've endured heartbreak, disappointment, illness, and loss. But Nietzsche isn't talking about what life does to you. He's talking about what you are willing to do to yourself. He's speaking of the courage required to peel back the social masks, to confront the parts of yourself you've disowned, and to stop asking others to complete what you've been too afraid to develop alone. Why does love feel distant, even in relationships that are technically functional? Why do some of us feel invisible despite being surrounded by people? Nietzsche believed that we teach others how to love us by how we treat our own authenticity. If we show up half-truthful, carefully filtered and emotionally sanitized, then we invite relationships that reflect exactly that. The love you long for, raw, electric, deeply rooted, cannot exist in the shadow of who you pretend to be. And as terrifying as that sounds, it's also where real hope begins. Because this means love isn't only about finding the right person, it's about becoming someone unafraid to be seen entirely. If this reflection has already touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and share in the comments. What part spoke to you the most? Now, let's continue. Nietzsche often spoke of resentment, a kind of suppressed anger that builds in people who feel powerless, unloved, or unseen. But what's rarely discussed is how much of that pain starts with ourselves. Before we feel abandoned by others, we often abandon our own inner truth. How many times have you swallowed your thoughts to avoid confrontation? Laughed when you didn't find something funny? Nodded in agreement just to keep the peace? These moments seem harmless, even polite, but over time they add up to something dangerous, a pattern of self-betrayal. Nietzsche believed that when we deny our instincts and suppress our will, not just once but repeatedly, we begin to erode our own soul. We become strangers to ourselves, always adapting, always performing. And then we wonder why no one truly connects with us. But how can they if we've hidden the most vital parts of who we are? Loneliness isn't just being without people. It's being surrounded by people who can't reach you, because the version of you they know isn't real. And that's where Nietzsche's philosophy becomes painfully relevant. Love requires confrontation with the self. It requires the rejection of roles, of societal expectations, of the comfort found in fitting in. We fear that if we show who we really are, we will be rejected. But Nietzsche turns that fear inside out. He'd say the real tragedy isn't rejection. It's living your whole life accepted for someone you never truly were. This becomes especially real in midlife. As the masks we've worn for decades begin to feel heavier, and the people we've built our lives around start to feel like strangers, or worse, like reflections of our own inauthenticity, we're forced to ask, have I ever truly been myself in love? To love and be loved requires one brutal act of honesty. Stop abandoning yourself. Reclaim your truth, even if it costs you approval. Even if it disrupts comfort. Because anything less is not love, it's survival. From childhood, we're taught to be good. Good children, good students, good spouses, good citizens. But often being good quietly becomes being agreeable, non-threatening, inoffensive. In Nietzsche's words, this is the moral conditioning of the herd. It's not about genuine virtue, it's about conformity. And slowly, imperceptibly, we trade our individuality for acceptance. We wear masks, not out of vanity, but out of fear. Fear of being judged, misunderstood, or worst of all, unloved. These masks help us survive in families where silence was safer than truth. in workplaces where obedience was rewarded more than creativity, in relationships where our partner wanted comfort, not depth. But Nietzsche reminds us, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. The problem is that many of us have adopted whys that aren't our own. We live to fulfill expectations that were never truly ours. And the result is emotional suffocation, an invisible kind of despair. Have you ever caught yourself saying, "I don't even know who I am anymore"? That's not failure. That's an alarm bell, a sign that your mask has fused too tightly to your skin. It's a call to break free, even if the freedom feels terrifying. Nietzsche's philosophy is not gentle. It demands that you become ruthless in your self-honesty. That you strip away roles, mother, provider, caretaker, peacekeeper, not because they're meaningless, but because if they define you entirely, they swallow you whole. Real love, the kind that doesn't wither in silence, requires that we take off the mask, not recklessly but courageously. And yes, some people will pull away. They love the performance, not the person, but the ones who stay, they're the ones you were starving for all along. You cannot be loved for who you are while hiding behind who you think you should be. And midlife is the perfect season to begin that unveiling, because you've earned the right to be real. You've paid for it with years of self-abandonment. Now it's time to collect. When people hear Nietzsche's concept of the will to power, they often misunderstand it as a hunger to control others. But that's a shallow interpretation. Nietzsche wasn't obsessed with dominance. He was obsessed with the inner strength required to become fully oneself. Not to overpower others, but to stop being overpowered by fear, guilt, or societal conditioning. For many in their 40s, 50s, and beyond, life feels like a tug-of-war between obligation and authenticity. You've raised children, served partners, fulfilled duties, but somewhere along the way, a quieter voice emerged, the one asking, "But what about me?" Nietzsche would say that voice is your will to power, not selfishness, but your buried capacity to take ownership of your inner world. Not to be in control, but to become responsible for the direction of your soul. This is where many of us falter. We wait for permission. We hope someone will validate our pain, invite us to change, or rescue us from our confusion. But Nietzsche's philosophy is raw. No one is coming and no one should. Because the moment you wait to be saved, you've already surrendered your power. Taking back your life, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, is not a dramatic act. It's 100 quiet choices a day. Saying no when you mean no. Speaking up when you're afraid. Listening to the discomfort instead of drowning it in routine. And most of all, learning to live not from fear of disapproval, but from alignment with your truth. Midlife offers a brutal but beautiful opportunity, the ability to stop chasing worth and start creating it. To stop asking, "Am I lovable?" and start asking, "Am I living in a way that respects who I really am?" Nietzsche invites us not to fix our lives, but to reclaim them. To stop waiting for the perfect love, and instead become someone who no longer accepts anything less than the truth. From others, and especially from ourselves. Because the will to power, when understood correctly, doesn't make you aggressive. It makes you awake. It's one of the hardest truths to accept. We often allow the kind of love we think we're worthy of. Not the kind we want, not the kind we need, but the kind that matches our hidden self-perception. And if deep down we believe we are unworthy, broken, or too much, we will unconsciously gravitate toward people and relationships that confirm those beliefs. Nietzsche might call this a form of existential cowardice, not because we are weak, but because we are afraid to become the full expression of our power. And that fear drives us to accept scraps when we were meant for something deeper. How does this play out? We ignore red flags because we fear being alone. We stay quiet in moments that call for truth. We tolerate emotional distance, manipulation, or neglect, and we tell ourselves, "At least I'm not abandoned." But Nietzsche would challenge that notion. Is a life lived in denial truly less lonely than being alone? He believed that much of human suffering comes from internal contradictions. We say we want love, but we fear intimacy. We crave connection, but we don't show up as our true selves. We long to be seen, but we hide behind curated versions of who we think we should be. and then we're shocked when our relationships feel shallow or unsatisfying. The question Nietzsche pushes us to ask is not, why won't they love me? But why am I attracted to what keeps me small? Why do I seek out dynamics where I have to earn approval, tiptoe around emotional landmines, or constantly prove my value? The answer for many of us is heartbreakingly simple, because we still don't believe we're enough. But this isn't a condemnation. It's an invitation to unlearn what you were taught about love, to stop defining your worth through the reactions of others, and to realize that your standards are not too high. They are a reflection of your healing. Because in Nietzsche's world, true strength isn't about never falling. It's about having the courage to rise from your own shadow and say, I deserve more, because I've become more. There's a quiet lie embedded in modern life that peace and happiness mean ease, comfort, and smooth emotional sailing. But Nietzsche knew better. He believed that discomfort, even suffering, was not just a part of life. It was a requirement for transformation. We've been conditioned to avoid pain, to distract ourselves, to medicate it, to call it a crisis when it arrives. But what if pain, emotional, existential, relational, isn't always a problem to fix? What if it's a signal that the false structures we built around ourselves are beginning to crack? Nietzsche called this process becoming who you are, not who society told you to be, not who your family needed you to be, but the unfiltered, unedited self, buried beneath years of expectations and protective layers. And as with any deep excavation, it's going to hurt. Especially in midlife, when roles begin to shift, illusions fall away, and old ambitions lose their grip, we're faced with a terrifying space. Now what? It's in this liminal period, where the old no longer fits and the new hasn't fully formed, that many feel lost. But Nietzsche would urge us, don't run from this void, lean into it, this pain, this disorientation. It's not a sign you've failed, it's a sign you've outgrown something. True self-love is not soft, it doesn't always feel good. It means sitting in the discomfort long enough to hear what your life has been trying to tell you for years. It means not rushing to rebuild, not chasing another distraction, but allowing the silence to speak. Growth hurts because it breaks you open. And in Nietzsche's eyes, that's sacred, because only in that brokenness can something new, something real emerge. He didn't believe in healing through comfort, he believed in rising through confrontation. So the next time you find yourself overwhelmed, raw, or uncertain, remember, this isn't a detour from your path, this is the path. And your willingness to walk it, without pretending or shrinking, is the greatest act of courage you can offer yourself. It sounds paradoxical, even cruel, that the path to genuine love might require becoming unlovable first. But Nietzsche, in all his brutal clarity, points us to this truth. If being loved has always meant being agreeable, soft-spoken, or endlessly accommodating, then what happens when you stop performing? The answer is simple. Some people will pull away. The version of you they loved was never fully you. It was a curated self shaped by fear and a deep need to belong. Deep need. When you begin to speak harder truths, enforce boundaries, and claim your space, it threatens the status quo. And in that disruption, love that was built on compliance begins to fall apart. But here's the deeper truth. That was never love. That was conditional acceptance. Nietzsche invites us to embrace this fallout, not as failure but as purification. Because the people who leave when you become real are not evidence that you're unlovable. They're evidence that you finally stepped outside the boundaries of what was safe for others, and sometimes for yourself. To become unlovable in this context means daring to be misunderstood, to stop explaining your worth, to refuse to soften your intensity or shrink your desires. It's the courage to stand alone, to be judged, to lose proximity, all in service of truth. And here lies the paradox. In risking rejection, you become capable of real intimacy, because only when you stop filtering yourself can someone actually see you. Only when you stop adjusting can someone meet you without illusion. It's messy, it's uncomfortable. And yet, it's the beginning of something honest. In Nietzsche's words, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. That chaos, the anger, the grief, the unspoken longing, is not what makes you unworthy. It's what makes you whole. And wholeness is what allows love to root deeply beyond performance, beyond transaction. So yes, you may become less likable to some. You may even feel lonelier for a time. But in that loneliness, something sacred happens. You find yourself. And when someone loves that version of you, it changes everything. We spend years, sometimes decades, searching for the right love. The person who will understand us, accept us, stay with us. But Nietzsche offers a far more uncomfortable and liberating idea that the love you seek can only find you after you become the person who no longer needs it to feel whole. It's not about becoming cold or detached. It's about no longer building your identity around being chosen, wanted, or approved of. Because when your worth depends on being loved, you are always one rejection away from collapse. Nietzsche didn't believe in love as rescue. He believed in love as reflection, a mirror of your own becoming. If you are fragmented, love will mirror that. If you are hiding, love will remain shallow. But if you have faced yourself, your shadows, your desires, your truths, then love can become something sacred, not a need but a resonance. And here's the hard truth for many in midlife. Most of us were never taught how to love ourselves without condition. We were raised to earn worth through success, beauty, sacrifice, or obedience. But Nietzsche asks us to drop the script, to stop waiting for someone to finally give us what we're afraid to cultivate within. This is not about blame. It's about ownership. It's about waking up and realizing, I am the source of the love I crave. That doesn't mean closing yourself off to others. It means showing up from a place of fullness, not desperation. It means becoming someone who doesn't abandon themselves, even when others do. And when you live from that place, when you stop performing, stop settling, and start telling the truth, you begin to attract what you've become. Not perfect people, not fairy tale endings, but relationships rooted in truth, in presence, in respect. Nietzsche would not promise that everyone will love you once you've done the work. But he'd offer something better, that you will no longer need them to. And from that freedom, real connection becomes possible, not because you're incomplete, but because you are finally, courageously, whole. There's a moment, quiet, unannounced, when something shifts inside you. You don't scream, you don't beg. You simply whisper to yourself, I'm done. Done pretending. Done waiting. Done shrinking to make others feel comfortable. Nietzsche believed that true liberation begins not with a grand act, but with an internal declaration, a decision to no longer participate in your own distortion. That moment of surrender is not weakness. It's the beginning of authentic strength. When you say, I'm done, you stop living for validation. You start listening to the parts of you that have been silenced for years, the honest voice, the bold desire, the quiet rage. And from that stillness, something new begins. Not revenge, not rebellion, but realignment. You're no longer chasing love. You're becoming love. You're no longer avoiding pain. You're transforming through it. This is what Nietzsche meant by becoming who you are. Not an idealized version, but the raw, unfiltered truth of your being. It won't be easy, but it will be yours. And that, finally, is enough.